Hi, I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, please hit like, and please share this with friends. And what we're going to do today is do a performance test on this very beautiful Elgin convertible pocket watch. So what is this performance test that we're going to conduct? This watch was just cleaned and reassembled, and the upper jewels and lower jewels were not oiled on this watch. And the balance was put back in as is, and the upper lower jewels on the balance were not oiled as well. So the first thing we're going to do is wind this watch fully. So I've got an excellent amplitude the way it is right now, with unoiled and the balance and balance cock unserviced. So we're going to then measure the amplitude and the beat error of the watch prior to servicing the balance and prior to oiling the first, second, third, and fourth wheels, and just checking out the performance as a baseline. So we're going to baseline the performance of this watch fully wound and really not oiled. Then we're going to take the balance out of this watch and service it properly. We're going to flip the watch over and service the balance cap jewel, get the oil in there after cleaning, and we're going to service the cap jewel on the upper part of the balance cock. And you're oiling the cap jewel, but the jewel itself should already be clean, but we'll make sure we peg out the hole so it's cleaned. And after we've serviced it, we're going to wind it fully again, and we're going to put it on a timing machine and see what kind of amplitude we get and see if there's an improvement in beat error, although I'm not that concerned with the beat error in this test. I just want to see what kind of performance improvement that you get by doing this servicing of the balance, the upper lower balance jewels, cap jewel oiling, and then oiling the first, second, third, and fourth wheel. Bearing in mind that the first wheel is the mainspring, it's already been oiled. So I'll check below to see if there's any additional oil that needs to be added to that. And then we have a clean movement, and we'll see what results we get. As you can see in the base of this movement, it is adjusted, and it is a railroad grade Elgin convertible movement from 1890. So I'm going to white glove the winding. I have a winding key here that's the right size for this watch. If you wind it to the very end, you're actually not getting the best performance based on the physics of the mainspring. So I wind it until I feel a good amount of resistance, which means I'm getting very close to the end here. So that should be good right there. And that should give me the maximum amplitude for this watch. So let's measure this. So the first measurement of the watch here, unserviced. So basically, again, unserviced from an oiling perspective, but it has gone through a cleaning machine, but the balance, nothing has been done with the balance and upper or lower jewels and cap jewels of the balance. And it's running with an amplitude of 204, which isn't that bad. I've left the LA at 52, and the rate is -4 seconds per day. I've adjusted that so I could be consistent with the rate when I put the balance back in after doing the adjustment. So that is not too shabby, I think. That's not too bad. A beat error of 1.6 should be 1 or under the beat error. So that could be adjusted as well, and I might adjust that when I adjust the balance itself, because I can adjust that beat error to find out which side of the beat error needs to be adjusted. I can do that by taking a slow motion picture of the balance and determining what the arm of the balance, does it swing clockwise more than counterclockwise, and which way should I turn the collet on the hairspring to adjust for that. So that's what I'll do. just to make sure I adjust it the right way, because 1.6 is a bit off here. So that's the result here, and we're gonna see what happens after I service this watch. I'll show some basic servicing as well. So what I think I'm seeing here is that the watch is swinging clockwise further than it's swinging counterclockwise, which would mean that I have to turn the collet counterclockwise to adjust for this. I'm going to think about it again before I touch that collet, but I believe that is what I need to do. And so my bead error is it needs to be adjusted counterclockwise to reduce the clockwise swing. So let's check that out, and let's take this balance cock off and start oiling the jewels, etc. So I need to take the power down on this watch, and to do that I need to get my key on the stem here, and there's a hole, and that hole is right here, and that hole allows you to push in and it depresses the click, and so that should allow me to take the power off. So I need to flip this around so I can get access to that, but I'm just going to simply remove the power from the watch. So I'm very carefully walking the power back here, step by step. You got to do it under control. I'm having to push a little bit here to get this click to release the ratchet wheel. So it's a little tricky here. There we go. And there's obviously still power on the watch because the watch is still moving. But I just get my finger in here. I'm using a kind of a fingernail to support the pushing here of this. So I'll just do that. And I'm not really sure if I'm deep enough into it here to push it out of the way. And you don't want to break anything, right? Yeah, I shouldn't be going this far in with this tool. There we go. Once I've got it released, I need to take advantage of that. I'm going to come back because this will bore you. I think I'm on a bit of a run here. I've got this click depressed perfectly, so now it's allowing me to remove power from the watch, and I'll remove it until effectively the balance is no longer turning. I think that might be it right there. I don't want to go any further than that because it might take the there we go. That should be good. It still seems to be moving just a bit, but I don't want to take the inner winding around the mainspring barrel to let go of the hook that I had made. So I'm a little nervous about that. So once I get it down, I just give it one turn. That way I know there's pressure on here, and now I can take the balance out. To safely remove the balance, there's a screw right here. So I'm going to loosen the screw, and I'm going to push the stud down until the hairspring goes out. Then I don't have to worry about pulling this out that way. So that's the safest way to take the balance out. Now I just need to get the right size screwdriver in here and turn that screw right here. And that should relieve the stud from the balance cock. I may have to get a smaller screwdriver to do this though, as this one seems a bit big for the job. Oh, no, I've got some action here. Now you don't have to back it off too far because it's it's just held in there nicely, so I just have to do that and then tap on the top there, and that should bring the stud out. And let me look underneath and make sure the stud is no longer in place, and it's sort of just sitting there. It's resting a bit on the spring, so it's fine where it is. And I can loosen the balance here, and I usually use a stick or something, but I've got my tweezers here to loosen the screw for the balance cock. And remove that and put that aside. Remember to put everything aside, as you're likely going to get it to attach to your hand, and you'll end up with a problem. Use a smaller screwdriver, and there it popped right out. Now see, because it wasn't attached to the hairspring, when this popped out, there was no issue with stretching the hairspring, so there was no damage at all. So it's the best way of doing it. So it's perfect. And I'm looking at this, and there's no issues here at all. Seems like the regulator pins on this, let me just show you here, are leaning forward a little bit. I'm going to have to go down to show you this properly, but it looks like they're leaning forward a bit, but I'm not going to touch that, as I don't know if that's going to impact anything. If they're leaning forward, that would make the it's leaning towards the stud, which would make the watch run slower. So the regulator was running a bit fast. So I may bend those back just a tad to allow me to adjust it properly. So that's that. And now the balance is sitting right there in the hairspring. And I'm going to have a look at this. It looks like it's in fairly good shape, but I'm going to clean that with alcohol by hand. So need to take it out very carefully so I don't you don't ruin the pivot on the other side. It's a lot easier to take out with the balance cock in there, because I'm holding it super light here and I'm pressing upward. There we go. So that's the balance out of the watch, and I'll have to rest this down on the mat for now, and then I'll put a piece of Rodico underneath it so it's safe, the pivot is safe, and have a look at where everything is sitting. So let me just get a piece of Rodico here, flatten that, and the Rodico will protect the balance from the pivot from bending or anything like that. So there's the balance right there. So here I'm putting the balance in a small nut that I fixed up for the dunker tank I made, that you're familiar with if you followed my channel for a long period. There's a piece of faux leather on the bottom there that again will protect the pivot, and I'm just going to fill this right up and allow this to soak. So we'll just do that, and then we'll set that aside, and that'll soak for quite a while. And I can agitate it after, but you need to soak it for probably 15 minutes at least. So now I want to remove the screws for the cap jewel, and I just want to make sure I put this in the right way, so I'm just going to score this ever so slightly. Now, if this were a very, very high-end watch, I likely wouldn't do that, but I've got a little tiny score mark there, and that will let me put this setting back in with the correct side in the right way, and then I can take the jewels out here, or sorry, the screws out. And there's one, and bear in mind you can use Rodico to pick these up so you don't lose them, and just rub them down onto the mat, and the Rodico does a great job for that. It's an oh by the way I just listen for the noise of the thread going through, and then it should be pick upable after that. Like that. And I always keep the screws left and right in the right order in case a new screw has been put in and it was threaded in there. Now, with any luck, I might be able to just take this setting right out by putting a screwdriver in here and just rotating it to see if that'll lift the setting. I think it might, so what I'm going to do is set up a piece of Rodico to allow me to do this. So now I have the balance cock sitting on the Rodico. I should be able to enter it from both sides. I'm using my orange and white screwdriver, which are my two smallest screwdrivers, and I'm hoping that this will work. I'll be able to just lift this up and out. And if I can do that, I basically prevent any mishaps in pushing the jewel out. So here we go. There goes the setting. So it's perfect. So there it is there. That's the setting out of position. And now I can look down through here and see if that jewel is in decent shape. I want to make sure the jewel itself is in pretty good shape. So again, I'm going to take a piece of Rodico and just kind of punch in here and clean up what I can clean from the jewel. Like that. And as I'm not replacing settings today, I just need to make sure it's operational. So I'm going to check under my microscope to make sure that jewel setting is, or the jewel is decent. So the jewel hole is perfect, and it's also clean. So now I've got to examine the setting here to make sure I have no issues with the setting. And I'll clean that with a piece of pegwood, the base of a piece of pegwood. So there seemed to be some kind of a gum on the top of this, and that would definitely prevent this movement from running efficiently. So just clean that gum off the top. And I'm going to dip that into the lighter fluid that I had already out and soak that just a little tiny bit. I know that lighter fluid and the Rodico won't get along very well, but clean that up and then get that ready for installation and make sure if a thing of beauty. So I just want to make sure that the base here, I've got some marker, black marker on the end here that I don't want to use this one because that will definitely come out, and I use that for another project. So I just use the base of a piece of Rodico and just scrape the bottom here. That usually works quite well. And then I look at the reflection of the jewel setting. The jewel, I look at the reflection to see, and as you can see, that shiny part, there's no guck left. That's the reflection that you look at as you're cleaning this. So now when I oil this, I'd like to be absolutely sure that it's going to go in the watch the right way, the correct way. So let me turn that around for a second. Because of the alcohol, the Rodico is gunked up a bit on this, so I just have to attack this with another piece of Rodico to get that off of the top because it just looks ugly. It's not a functional issue. So now that the jewel is ready, I want to make sure it's lined up properly. So I know where I scored it, and I know where the mark is, and it needs to go the other way. So it should go this way into the balance cock, which means I'm going to flip it over the other way, like this, and then I'll be able to put the oil on there and then flip it back over, and it's ready for installation. So let me get the oil ready. And again, with oiling, if you pull the oiler out fast, you get more oil than if you pull it out slow. So we just need a drop of oil on here, like that. That is all you need. You don't need more oil than that. You can see a little tiny bit of drop on here. And as I put it in, if I screw up, I just redo it. So now this should line up almost perfectly. Let's get a little bit stuck here. And I want to make sure that the screws are lined up as well. So I'm going to try to rotate it a bit. There we go. That's perfect. So now I want to take a piece of flattened pegwood and push straight down on it so it goes into where it needs to go. That's perfect. And I look at where you can barely see where I scored it here, but that is that. And then I've got to grab the screws. Now, like I said before, I have the screws positioned so that the one on this side, I can quickly identify the right screw for the right hole. And when you're doing this, hold the screws ridiculously light. That way, if they go for a jump, that's probably too light, but if they decide to run away, they're not going to fly away past your desk and you'll never find them again. So these screws are wanting to stick to my tweezers, so that's the wrong hole, buddy. That is the wrong hole. There we go. That can sometimes be a bit of a pain as you try to get these very small screws back inside. So let me just do this work here. I'm not going to tighten them yet until I get both of them in place. Now I was chatting with Sonny Morehouse online here, who he's the administrator of the Facebook Amateur Watchmakers page. So get in there and sign up to Sonny's page. He does a great job administering the page. He talked to me about the assembly of the watch, and I put the balance cock or the balance fork in first with its cock, and I did that to get the room on the other side so I could oil the pallet stones. That's the reason why I did it. He said that's not normally what he does. He does the pallet fork later. Now I've done that before as well, and I've had real problems trying to get the pallet fork in place. So I've switched the process around a little bit. So there you go. So there it is there. Clean as a whistle and ready to go. So that's in really good shape right now. So there's the balance sitting in its spot. Now I should be able to agitate this ever so slightly with my air blower here. And I just put that on a base I have for the lathe. And I don't need to agitate this a lot because I've left this for quite a while unsupervised. And I'm putting this on the base so when the lighter fluid flies off, it'll evaporate from that. So I just need to do this a few times because it's been in the lighter fluid for quite some time. And it does clean it up nicely. So there shouldn't be a problem here at all. And like I said, the lighter fluid will evaporate, but I don't want it hitting my mat if I can avoid that. And just agitate it a bit. It will make a lot of difference. And when I take it out, I'll pull the spring up and have a piece of watch paper underneath to be able to put this on. So let me grab a piece of watch paper, and you guys can watch that balance make sure it doesn't go anywhere while I grab the watch paper. Here's the watchmaker's paper, and I'll fold that a few times because it'll be fairly wet from the balance, and I'll just be able to put that down and out of the way. So I'm just going to put that on my mat, and when I pull this out, I just put that down and let that dry. So I can take this out, and I'll take it out by the balance as opposed to taking it out by the spring, but I want to stretch that spring after for drying. So we'll just take this out like this and put this on the watch paper, which will absorb a lot of the lighter fluid. So it's a shame I got a full thing of lighter fluid here. I wish there was something I can clean with that, but I'll put that aside for now. And I'll move this plate out of the way that's wet, and that will dry off fairly quickly. So just keep that away from any flammable objects. Now this is a movement, and it's on a gel pad. It's a Bergeon 5395-75N, and it's inverted because I've got the microscope on the other side and I had to invert the picture so it wouldn't look stupid. So that's that, and now I've got to take the two screws off of this part, and with any luck I'll be able to remove that with a screwdriver the same way I did for the upper balance jewels. So I've removed this one, and let me get this one here. I put this on the pad because this has a center wheel that could be an issue, and I did not want to put that in my Myers number 58 movement holder. I can use a bigger screwdriver than that. I think I picked the wrong one. That is now loose, and the same as what I said before, I'm going to position this on my mat with that first one high and the second one lower. That way I put the screws back exactly where they came from, except I'm going to adjust this just slightly. I just have to remember. Now with any luck, again, I can pull this out, and if I can do that, I just have to look and see if it moves, and yes, it does move. So if it moves, that usually means I can pull it out, so it's not stuck in there. And if I can pull it out, I don't have to concern myself with punching it out. So it's much better. There we go. Now I pull that one out, and I'm trying to look at the marks on it so I put it back the right way. There's one mark right there, and I'll make sure that mark is on the bottom part when I put this thing back. So the first thing I'm going to do is just plunge in here with my Rodico here to make sure I get anything that was on this side here. The holes on these are almost impossible to peg out. They're so small you're going to likely leave a little bit of stuff in there. So just clean it up as best you can. The Rodico will plunge into the jewel hole and clean most of it out. The major thing here is to, let me have a look at this thing again, make sure I've got the imperfections pointing the right way. So that's on the bottom side, okay? So if I turn that around, here I look at the base, and this is actually in pretty darn good shape. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Let's just bring that into view here, and I'll focus. So that's a close-up of the bottom of that jewel setting, and it actually looks really good. So I'm impressed. So I don't have to do a lot of work on this, and I have a hard time working under the microscope here, but I'm just going to grab this setting with my tweezers, and I just need to clean it off just a bit with a piece of pegwood. Now that's actually pretty good, but I'm going to dunk it into the dunker tank of alcohol again. Get it wet. Bring it back, and then clean it off a bit more. Let that sit for a few seconds, And then I will get that in view here, left, right, center. There we go. That's pretty much in view right there. And then I want to get the back end of that piece of pegwood again to make sure it's clean as a whistle when I rub this thing. Now once I've done that, I can use my blower now to get rid of any excess alcohol, because that alcohol will evaporate ridiculously quick. Yeah, that's beautiful. Now if I look at the reflection here again, see if I can get a reflection from this for the camera. Which way do I turn it? There we go. Now you see that reflection? That is a perfect jewel. So there's no material left on that. So now again, to set myself up for putting this back in again, I want to turn this around. Sorry for the movement. I'm just trying to keep this all in camera view. And left is left and right is not right. So you can see a little tiny bit of green stuff on the edge here, but I'm not concerning myself with that. I'll look at that in a second. I may brush that out with my fiber brush. So, but I just want to make sure I've got this set up to go back the right way. So I'll pick that up, put it back down again, and I can see the mark on the bottom right there. If you can see that exact same mark, that's the mark that I said goes in the bottom, so this jewel setting will go back in like that. So because I've got a little tiny bit of green corrosion, I'm going to use my brush, and I'll show you that brush here to see if I can brush away a little tiny bit of that corrosion. And I'm not sure if I will be able to do it successfully, but I'm going to try. So here's the brush. This is a Bergion 6240. So I'm going to brush this and then go in with Rodico to get rid of any leftovers that might be there. So the jewel is in excellent shape, by the way. Now, there's all kinds of little flakies left over when you do this from this fiberglass brush, but I should be able to pick them out of the hole with the Rodico. I remember last time I did that, I got some flakes stuck on my skin. I was like, that's no damn good. I'm going to clean it up over here. So these are the banking pins here, and there's no need to adjust the banking pins on a watch normally unless it's not operating. And I've done this before where I've had to adjust the banking pins and got a significant improvement from the pocket watch by doing it properly. If you do it improperly, you can cause all kinds of issues, but you have to look at the banking pins and almost the max on both sides and then bring them in so that they're providing you a better amplitude, because there's an optimal number of degrees that you should be turning it, right? So I think I got most of that stuff out of the hole. I can still see one more little piece of stuff in here that, because the camera's inverted, I was attacking the wrong side maybe. Yeah, so if I attack this side, yeah, so that's good there. I'm not gonna, you know what I was doing because of the inversion of the camera is I was brushing the wrong side of that hole. So let me just get back at this again and brush the correct side. I'm just trying to get rid of a bit of corrosion here on the edge. It's a bit of a long video, I apologize again. I'm the king of the long videos, so I think I need to go on this side more to go this way. If I do that, am I getting the stuff that I said, the corrosion I wanted to get rid of on this side? And that should do, yeah, look at that. So that looks a lot better. I was attacking the wrong side, and it was only because of the inverted camera that I'm dealing with right now. So now I can pick that stuff up again with the Rodico and take your Rodico, fold it over, and then go back in. And just when you think you're done, do it one more time. You do not want to leave a little piece of fiberglass hair in that hole, because that'll cause all kinds of problems. So I accidentally picked the jewel up, but there's no problem there at all. It's just on the mat here. You just have to make sure it's the right way again. So yeah, that's correct right there. So flip that around like this, and then I'm going to get the oil and get ready to oil this thing. There we go, and put a little dab of oil on it. Sad as it is, that is all you need for the amount of oil that you need. You can see that sitting as a perfect circle on there. Now I'm going to, under microscopic view, grab the setting, flip it around very carefully, and then line the movement up with the setting as close as I can do that. And now I want to make sure that that setting is nudged the right way before I press it down. So that looks pretty good there. So there, I'm going to try that and push it straight down with a piece of pegwood. There we go. So now that's in place. And with my Rodico, a final little cleanup around here. That looks pretty good there. And now if I turn this around, I've got the upper screw and the lower screw. I'm trying to get my my loop out of the way while I grab this so I can see what I'm doing. And mind you, the microscope is actually in the way right now of actually doing this work, so you're going to have to bear with me. I may have to reset the microscope because this is definitely making it difficult. So I can't get right over the top of this. There we go. This one is now in. Yeah, you're getting a close-up, but it's not good for me. I may have put a remote lens on there to do this properly, right? So maybe next time learn a lesson here. And turning your screwdriver around with the world's smallest screw in it is fun. You get used to it over time. So I'm going to screw this in, and then I'm going to back the microscope off. There we go. So now we're going to back the microscope off. Right now I'll tighten these screws because this has been appropriately serviced. Like I said before, you're not going to be able to peg out the hole here on this because they are so small. And these screws have got to be in, but not and snug, but not so tight as that the next watchmaker can't remove them. I've had that happen numerous times, where I was like, okay, what's going on here? So that's good right there. Now my arm actually hit something from my desk, and I'm not sure what that is, but it hit the floor. That's what I was telling you before. You can get something stuck to your arm and away it goes. I don't think it had anything to do with this watch. I'm going to have a look down and see what it might have been. Today's my lucky day. All it was a piece of pegwood. Or as Al Bundy used to say, it was just a piece of wood, peg. Okay, now I'm going to oil the wheels. So the first wheel I'm going to oil is this one here. So this would take a lighter, a heavier oil actually, because of it's a bigger wheel in the escapement, or in the wheel train. So I'll put that in there. The next one, same type of oil, and I'm using the 1300. That's all that's going to need, and the escapement I'm going to use that as well. But I use a 90-10 for the balance. So that's that. I think I might be able to get some oil underneath this here. I'm going to try, but I'll likely not be able to do it under camera. But what I'm going to do is flip this around, and I'm going to apply some oil to the other side of these pivots. So the first one is, this is where the mainspring is. So I'm going to put oil here. Let that set, and then I've got the jewels. The jewels are right there, so I'm going to oil these as well. Yeah, from the mainspring over. Now, one thing I really want to watch out for is where the fourth wheel pivot is sticking out. You have to be extremely careful not to break that off. You have to be aware of where it is. And for God's sakes, stay clear of it. Don't break that off. But you can put a little tiny bit of oil on the base. Now what I do, again, like I said before, is I lift the oiler up. There we go. I lift the oiler up slowly to get the smallest drop of oil onto the oiler. I lift it up slowly from the well, and I get the smallest drop of oil possible. And then I'm able to pick that up. So that's this side here. So that's all good. I've already oiled this lever here before. You saw me oil that. I don't really need to oil the seconds wheel gear, or sorry, the minute wheel gear, or the cannon pinion, this area here. There's really no reason to oil that. So let me just flip this over again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into my Myers number 58 movement holder. So I'm going to make sure that this is not interfering with the actual setting levers for the watch. So I'm going to put it down for a second, and then I'll just adjust it after. There's the setting lever, so I want to move that out of the way. So it's on the other side. So the setting lever is just kind of sticking out a little tiny bit. So that should do right there. I'm a little bit close for you to see the action, but there we go. And the beautiful thing about this Myers number 58 movement holder is that these little corners right here, they allow you to grab the watch at an angle, the base of the watch at an angle, and this does not come up. I believe it's the best design I've ever seen for a movement holder. These things will run you at least $300 on eBay. So now I've got to reassemble the balance to the balance clock. That's something I usually do under a microscope. I don't bother doing it in public because I've got to make sure that the regulator arms, the two regulator arms, fit in there over the spring, and basically found that doing that with a microscope is a lot easier. So I'll be back in 1 millisecond. I just wanted to make a note at how good the coils are on this particular pocket watch. They're perfect. There's no issue at all. So that should provide better performance. I also would like to move this collet ever so slightly counterclockwise and see if that makes a difference. So for bead error, as I said, I kind of estimated that I need to move that counterclockwise, but what I'm going to do is the process of actually aligning it properly within the watch itself. So it's just a different way of doing it, but I've done this before and have had perfection on this thing. It's worked really well. So I take the balance here, the balance cock here, and I put that back in without the hairspring. So just rest it like that. So now I know there's a line that I have to achieve. Let me just move this away so you can see it a bit better. There's a line I need to achieve between the balance here, the balance cock here, and if I look down, I can see where the pallet fork pivot is coming out through the pallet fork cock right there. So I want to have the impulse jewel in between the banks of that, right? So it's a tricky thing, but if I rest this down on top like this, right, I can actually see where that impulse jewel is pointing. So now if the impulse jewel is at 90 degrees to the arms of the balance, which it should be at, I'm going to have a look at that right now. Of course it's not. It's over on one side, more on one side than the other. So that is how I've done it before, where I've lined it up, and I think just by where that impulse jewel is going to end up, that the impulse jewel is slightly off from there, so that impulse jewel is likely right too much. So I do have to move the collet counterclockwise. So it takes a bit of time to get used to doing that, but that's what I've done before, and I'm just going to grab this collet and move it just a bit, and hopefully it does move. And to do that properly, you just have to take a visual reference point on that. And I'm sorry if my hand's getting away here, but I have no choice. But I take a visual reference point here of where that collet is, and then I want to move this, put my tweezers in here, and just there. I just move that collet ever so slightly to line that up properly. Now if I hold that again, I'll hold that. I gotta just move my chair up for a second. I apologize for the delay here. But if I hold that upside down now over the movement, let me get that back in here and line this up like this. It's pretty tricky when everything is inverted, but so be it. So now if I pull that out like that, and I look down on that, and I look where the impulse jewel will end up on the opposite side of where that collet is attached. And it'll end up the exact same amount of degrees over on the other side. So there's no way of telling unless you have a 90 degree, an impulse jewel that is 90 degrees to the arms of the watch. So I look at that, it's likely closer to where it needed to be than it was before. And so I'm just praying that would be between the banking pins. So there we go, to complete the full line that I need to complete. So we're going to reassemble this and see how close I was. So now the balance went back together without a problem at all, and I just have to take my my winding key, and I want to put some power on this watch. I'm not going to wind it fully, I just want to put a bit of power on this watch to swing the pallet fork the correct direction for the impulse jewel to enter the mouth of the pallet fork. So, oh, that doesn't feel good. It was loose for a second, which means that the mainspring hook probably let go. That's not good. Hopefully we get a hold of it here. So I'm going to put that in like this, and just to check to make sure my balance is snapping back and forth. Probably too well. Oh, there we go. So the only thing I'm concerned with here at all is the bead error. Now if the bead error is worse or not as good or whatever, I'm not going to do the adjustment at this moment. I'm just going just take my word for it that I'm going to adjust it after, but I just want to see what the amplitude performance is with this watch, newly clean and put together. So I got to angle this properly to be able to put this movement or the watch together. All right, let's see if I can do this successfully, because sometimes you do miss it up a bit. But so I just go in this way, try to get that pivot as close as possible, and then turn the movement. And I put my hands over the top only to make sure the balance for some reason doesn't fall out, because that would be a disaster. So once I've got the balance in like this, I almost expect ticking to happen here, but oh, there we got a little bit of ticking here. And now I want this to snap down in place, which means everything kind of is set properly. Is that good there? All right, so now I've got some action there. And I think when I put the screw in, it'll align things up properly. And believe it or not, whenever I do this stuff, I do pray and hope. So to make sure that it's running properly. All right, that's now nice and tight. And now I've got to swing the arm over here. And that has the fingers, the regulator arm fingers. So I've got to move this up and over very carefully and put it back in the exact same slot it was in before, although I may be adjusting that after. I think it's in there right now, hopefully. I need to get a little bit of closer look on that to make sure it's good. All right, there are the results. It's a little erratic right now, plus 13 seconds per day. I got a little noise on the upper signal, so I got to see what that is. There's plus 1 second per day, but the amplitude is up to 224, and look at that beat error, 0.1. So the way I adjusted the beat error worked extremely well. And I think that's the only way I know how to do it, but that worked ridiculously well. As you recall before, I think it was 1.6 before, which is pretty high beat error. So 0.2, 9 seconds a day. It's a little messy in the upper signal. I'll have to look and see what that is. That noise can be some other condition or something. It's climbing a bit, so the beat error is ridiculously good though. It says plus 2, but then it jumps to plus 16. So I think this will work itself in as well. So I don't need to regulate it anymore. I was trying to regulate it just a little bit to see if I could flatten it out. And see, it's plus 4 again. So there may be some inconsistencies in there with the wheels, not sure. So, but that's a pretty good result. So that's it. It's 221 amplitude. I didn't wind it all the way up. Probably could get a better amplitude on this if I put a good strong wind on it, but in general that's pretty darn good, and the beat error of 0.2 is fantastic. So my theory was correct, and what I did to adjust it was right on the money, folks. So that's the result. I hope you really enjoyed this video today. It was a lot of fun to make, and I'll catch you next time.